Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Good morning to all of you. Senior Pastor Jesse Williams said, Convent is as good a place as any. I would say Convent is a better place than most to share this message, Pastor. I want to thank Senior Pastor Jesse Williams for his hospitality today and First Lady Jelaine Williams. I also want to, let's give them a round of applause. I also want to applaud the pastor and the people of the church. We were chatting earlier this morning about your vision in bringing the work of the church outside the walls of the church and literally into the community by participating in this startup program, which is exactly that, creating jobs, entrepreneurship, giving young people a break. And that really is the message of what Christ was all about. And that's what this church is doing, faith in action, faith in action. I'd like to also take a moment to introduce two people who are with me today. Commissioner of Human Rights, Helen Foster, who is here, Commissioner. And my counsel, who if I do anything wrong, I'm just going to refer to him so he gets into trouble. My counsel, Alfonso David. It's my honor to be with you today as part of the Convent family as you celebrate. Also, happy Valentine's Day today. That is also part of the message, and it's my pleasure to be here. I am Catholic. I say basically same church, different pew from where we are today. And I had a great priest who was very kind to me for many years, who we lost over the Christmas holidays. And one day I walked out of the church, and he would greet people in the front of the church after the service. And I walked up, and he was right out of central casting, a small Irish priest, looked like a leprechaun, great blue eyes, always sparkling. And he always had a line, and he always had some wit. And he said, "Well, Governor, we are a work in progress." Now, I didn't know what that meant. And when you're in politics, you get very defensive right away because people are always attacking you. So I said, "We're a work in progress. Is that a political comment or a personal comment, Father?" Because I thought maybe I did something that week that offended the church, which I've done many things that have offended the Catholic Church, I want you to know. But he said, no, that's a personal comment. We are a work in progress. I said, and when do we end being a work in progress? He said, only when we die. Because up until then, we're just human. And when we're human beings, we come back every Sunday and we say the same thing. Forgive me, Father, I have sinned. Forgive me, I repent, I understand, I'll go back, and I'll try to do better this week. And then we come back the following Sunday and say, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. There is a truth to that. It's continually working to get better. It's truth on the individual level for us all. Lord knows it's true for me. It's also true for society as a collective. I wake up every morning as governor of the state of New York saying, what can we do better? What can we do better? What are we not doing well enough? What mistakes did we make? What can we do better? How do we make the public education system better? How do we get these kids out of these failing schools? How do we make the criminal justice system better? How do we stop these 15, 16, 17-year-old kids from throwing their lives away with drugs? How do we do that better? How do we make work pay? How do we dignify work and help poor families and working families get by? And that's why we want to raise the $15 minimum wage, highest in the country. How how do we help families live and cope as families? Everybody's so busy now. Everybody's got an iPhone in their hand and a BlackBerry on their hand, and they're looking down, and they're at the kitchen table, and they're still texting and rather than talking, and nobody has time, and that's what life is really all about, those quality times with family. So we want to do paid family leave this year, the best in the nation, that allows family to be there one for another in times of heartbreak, times that we want to celebrate. And one of the questions we always grapple with as a society, how do we make the society more fair, more just? How do we do justice? Because that's the one promise that society makes, right? Society says, we promise you justice, and then we promise you opportunity, but more, we promise you justice. It's written into the Constitution. And we have a long way to go to be a society that is more just. Now, when you talk about justice, people immediately go to criminal justice. Now, as a society, we know how to lock people up. I don't know that that is justice. I think that's taking a lot of young lives and locking them up and throwing away the key and doing a lot of damage that we don't need to do. We lock up more people than any industrialized nation on the globe. Any industrialized nation on the globe. It costs us $1 million to build a prison cell. $1 million. Costs about $60,000 per year to keep a person in that prison cell. $60,000 a year. More money than the tuition at Harvard University to keep a person in a prison cell. So we can have a discussion as to whether or not that is really justice. But there are other forms of justice. I would say deeper forms of justice. There's social justice, there's racial justice, there's economic justice. And we still have much more progress to do in those areas. And it's painful to say, but I believe as a starting point, you will never solve a problem that you are unwilling to admit. If you don't admit the problem, you are not going to solve it. As a nation, this nation still discriminates on the basis of race, color, and creed. It's painful to say, but if you're not willing to say it and you're not willing to admit it, you're not going to solve it. And we still discriminate. Now, I was telling the pastor, I spent 8 years during the Clinton administration. I was in Washington for all 8 years under Bill Clinton, and I was the Housing and Urban Development Secretary. And as part of that position, I did all the fair housing law enforcement. And I did thousands of cases across the country. And I can tell you, I did discrimination cases as ugly, as brutal as anything you would have seen in the 50s or the 60s. We had the Ku Klux Klan down south chasing people from the neighborhood because of the color of their skin. We had a case in Missouri, Pastor. Woman moved into a neighborhood. She was Portuguese. Welcoming committee planted a 7-foot cross on her lawn and burned it because she was Portuguese. They thought she was black. They didn't want her in the neighborhood. We did a case in Louisiana. There was an apartment complex, 2 buildings. You walk in, you're white, they send you to the white building. You walk in, you're African American, they send you to the black building. 2 swimming pools, 1 at each building. And it didn't matter how crowded the pool was, the whites couldn't go in the black pool and the blacks couldn't go in the white pool, okay? That was during the Clinton administration. We sued a city, a northeastern city that I won't mention. Maybe someone here is from there. Nice city by and large. We sued a city because in their public housing, they would discriminate, where they would send African Americans to one set of buildings, Latinos to another set of buildings, and whites to another set of buildings in public housing, believe it or not. So discrimination is alive and well. Now in New York, thankfully, it's not that obvious. It's not that obnoxious, usually. Usually. It can be that ugly and that obvious and that obnoxious. And we have had some terrible, terrible situations. But usually, it's more sophisticated. Because we're New York, we're sophisticated. And it's more subtle. It's employment discrimination, where you don't get the raise, you don't get the promotion, but they never say it's because of the color of your skin, it's for some other reason. You don't get the bank loan, but the bank examiner never tells you he didn't get past the color box on the application form. But it's more subtle, it's harder to prove. One place it exists systemically is in the area of housing and housing discrimination. Now, there is a law that was passed in 1968. It was passed as a tribute to Martin Luther King, and it was passed because of his death. This nation needed to do something to memorialize his sacrifice, passed the Fair Housing Law. Fair Housing Law said, you shall not discriminate in housing on the basis of race, color, creed, sex, period. Period. You can't say a person can live there or not there based on the color of their skin. That goes on all the time. All the time. Commissioner Foster's here. Her job at Human Rights is to ferret out and police that discrimination. We're announcing today the ending of 130 cases over the past 9 months to a year that the commissioner has resolved and reconciled against victims of discrimination in housing. 130, just 9 months. Now, discrimination in housing is not just immoral, it's not just wrong, it's not just unethical, it is also illegal. We haven't been aggressive in enforcing the law in the past, but it's illegal. And I want to be just as aggressive enforcing those laws as we are in enforcing the anti-drug laws and every other laws. Let's enforce the anti-discrimination law. To me, government is supposed to be active and strong and aggressive and show leadership. Government is not supposed to be impotent and passive. Government is not supposed to be saying, oh, woe is me, they broke the law. No, get out there, do something. James 2, 17, 18. Faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. We want to show this state, this city, that we're not going to tolerate anti-discrimination of anyone by our deeds. If you do it, you will be prosecuted because it is against the law. And that's what the State Division of Human Rights is all about. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start a series of investigations and enforcement actions. And we're going to do it statewide. And we've hired private firms to do the investigations. And this is how they do it. They see an ad for an apartment in a newspaper, and they send a white person in, and the white person says, I want to rent this apartment. Is it still available? Person, yes, it's still available. Okay. White person leaves. They send in an African American. A couple of hours later, I'd like to rent that apartment. Oh, I'm sorry, the apartment's no longer available. Or they send in a person with a Section 8 certificate. And the landlord says, oh, no, I don't want anyone with a Section 8 certificate. Or they send in a person with a disability, and the landlord says, oh, no, I don't want anyone with a disability. Or they go to a real estate broker, and the broker says, don't bother applying to that building because, you wouldn't be comfortable there. You wouldn't feel at home there. There are not people who you know there. You don't want to go there for your own good. This is discrimination. It is illegal. Sophisticated, subtle, but it is illegal. We are going to investigate it. We are going to find it. We are going to ferret it out. We are going to punish it, and we are going to prosecute it because it is illegal. We also announced today that the real estate brokers that are involved with this kind of behavior, because once in a while, not all the time, a landlord will say to the broker, don't send me any Italian families. Those Italian families, they're too loud. They're always yelling. They're always cussing. We don't want any Italians. Once in a while, the brokers are part of the problem. The sales agents, the brokers are part of the problem. The Department of State regulates the brokers. And we're putting the brokers on notice today. The Department of State is going to do a regulation. If you are part of violating the law, you're not going to be a real estate broker in the state of New York. It's going to be that simple. And we're announcing to all, with the 120 cases that we announced today, we're not going to let people get away with it. They're going to be fined. They're going to be held responsible. And we are going to make a difference in housing discrimination. Where you live is a very important decision nowadays. Where you live is where your child goes to school. And it can make the difference between going to a great school and going to a bad school. Where you live are the kids that your kids hang out with. And it can be a good group of kids, or they can be getting into trouble. Where you live is the safety of the community. And if we want to be what we say we want to be, an integrated community where we all live together and we all love one another, then by definition, you have to have a housing market that allows people to live wherever they want to live. And that's what this market is supposed to be all about. Now, we're going to make some people unhappy with what we did today. Not necessarily the people here at Convent, but trust me, there will be people who will be unhappy because it's going to be disruptive to a lot of big players in the housing industry who like it the way they now have it and who aren't going to want to deal with these issues. But that is what it is. It's about aggressive government, and it is about working for a more just society. Martin Luther King said, the arc of the moral universe is long and it bends towards justice. He did not mean to say that the arc bends on its own to justice. He was saying you can bend the arc to justice. Because Martin Luther King also said human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. We are going to bend the arc of justice. We are going to say this law is going to be enforced like this law has never been enforced. We are going to say we tolerate discrimination nowhere. This state is about acceptance of all, by all, discrimination of none, by none. Those are the rules that we live by in this state. And we're going to make this statement loud and clear, and we're going to enforce it. And we want to say to other states across the nation, if you're looking for the progressive future and you want to know how to deal with tough problems like racial unrest and cultural diversity, you look to the great state of New York. We have always been the capital of justice, and we're going to do it once again. I thank you for giving me time to be here today. I thank Pastor Williams. You have a beautiful Sunday. Happy Valentine's Day, and God bless you.